The Ha Giang Loop is one of the most popular road trips for tourists in Vietnam. In December 2024, I was one of thousands of people who travelled the mountainous roads for 4 days on the back of a motorbike. I rode on the back with a local who works as a tour driver. The views were unbelievable, and every night we had drinks and partied with our group. But it's also a journey that involves long distances, increasing traffic, and really remote roads. Earlier this month, 19-year-old British traveller Orla Wates was involved in a road accident while travelling the Ha Giang Loop. Local media reported she fell from the back of a motorcycle. She later died in hospital from her injuries. So how safe actually is the loop? What's it like for the drivers? And are there risks that don't get reported on?
Their earnings are based on keeping you happy. Tourists knocked on the door and dragged him out of his room to go back and party.
The Ha Giang Loop is a circular route of about 350 kilometres through the mountains of northern Vietnam, close to the Chinese border. You can either be a passenger on the back of a bike, driven by a local tour guide, they're known as easy riders, or you can drive yourself. In
peak season, most easy riders will be going at least 6, if not 7 days a week, which can be quite relentless. For us, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As soon as that tour finishes, the easy riders are on the next tour.
The trip usually spans 3 to 5 days and it's organised through a company. Prices vary, but it often costs a couple of £100s. You're riding through steep mountainous terrain, rural areas and long stretches of road, sometimes with no barriers and steep drops. Lorries, motorbikes, and even cattle all use the same roads. And these videos I took in December show how busy it can get at some of the stop points. I spoke to Glenda, who's done the loop 5 times, volunteered for one of the tour companies, and she met her partner, an easy rider who's been driving the loop for 5 years, through it.
It is so much more relentless now than it has ever been. Every single year it grows. I really think my partner probably knows every single corner of the loop and he could drive it with his eyes closed if he needed to, you know.
Tourism in Vietnam as a whole has grown rapidly over the last decade. In the north, destinations like Sapa have become heavily developed, and Ha Giang was seen as a quieter alternative, at least at first. The loop used to attract experienced riders, but after endless TikToks and word of mouth between backpackers, it blew up.
If you've backpacked Southeast Asia, you'll hear, I would say 90% of people say it's in their top things to do.
So now the loop and the jobs it brings have transformed the remote city of Ha Giang for locals.
Even 10 years ago, people there, the main employment was farm work, or people would go to Hanoi to get other work. So the loop has brought so much employment.
As more people arrive, more tour operators set up, hostels expand, and large groups are setting off at the same time. So across Southeast Asia, some safety regulations exist, but the enforcement of them varies, and Vietnam is no exception to that. In 2016, 3 British people died at Vietnam's Da Tan La waterfalls. Last summer, a tourist boat in its popular Ha Long Bay capsized during bad weather, killing 35 people. Early last year, a couple died after drinking contaminated alcohol in Hoi An. The company which 19-year-old Orla was with said it immediately assisted following her crash, coordinated emergency medical care and supported those affected. It said initial information indicates no alcohol or drugs were involved and that the vehicle was travelling at an appropriate speed, but an official investigation is still ongoing. The country is notorious for really dangerous roads. More than 10,000 people were killed in traffic accidents in 2024. Vietnam has made progress, but in remote areas like Ha Giang, geography, traffic and tourism growth still create risks. And standards seem to vary a lot between different loop companies.
Which company you go with can really make or break your trip. Some provide arm pads, shin pads, knee pads, helmets, you know. These aren't necessarily all things that come provided. A lot of companies just have a helmet that they've been using for the last 10 years and that's it.
Licence checks and safety briefings are not standardised, and some travellers who choose to drive themselves have limited experience of riding motorbikes in similar conditions. Another issue that comes up repeatedly is alcohol. Groups sleep overnight in rural homestays, and if you've done the loop, you'll know about happy water, homebrewed alcohol commonly offered by locals there.
Happy water, as they call it, corn wine in Vietnam, it is a big part of the culture, so it's always available there, but then that can very quickly step into being maybe a little bit excessive if people want to party.
Some companies lean into and advertise a party atmosphere more than others, with some drinking in the evenings is encouraged as part of the social side of the trip.
been on a video call with my partner where a tourist knocked on the door and dragged him out of his room to go back and party. And I think that's a really difficult situation to put drivers in.
For context, drivers are paid a wage, but a lot of their earnings will come from tourist tips. And Glenda says some feel a pressure to earn that tip by partying with the backpackers.
Their earnings are based on keeping you happy. Everyone will say the strong correlation is that people tip more for drivers who they think are fun, more than drivers who they think are safe. Tourists underestimate how much power they have in a community that doesn't have so much financial privilege, right? The average wage that a tourist is going with, if they earn in a day, is weeks of a Vietnamese driver's wage. And of course, then the drivers and the companies are bending over backwards to whatever the tourists want. It's not always the tourist's fault, but I think we can be mindful more that we have that power, and it's very difficult in that situation for people to advocate and say, no, I can't do that.
That doesn't mean people are necessarily riding under the influence, but over several days, it could affect how alert they are.
I do know of some drivers who have maybe been a little bit irresponsible, but I do have to say there are many companies and drivers who are responsible and who do drive well. You can absolutely do the loop without encountering these problems.
So, what do we know about how often it goes wrong? In places like Vietnam, reliable information can be hard to find, and some accidents might never be reported on.
People have little slips, I would say quite a lot. In terms of like a tourist dying, this is the first one that I've personally heard of in the Easy Rider community. I'm sure previously there have been, but it has shaken everyone a lot.
Often these stories aren't heard. Vietnam has no independent media. It's a one-party communist state which tightly controls reporting, and access for journalists is limited. Even the BBC's Southeast Asia correspondent is currently blacklisted from the country. So reporting restrictions like this make it harder to build a clear picture of how often serious incidents happen, or what happens when they do. There's no official record we found of accidents or deaths on the Ha Giang Loop, but a small number of incidents have been reported in the media, including a tourist who died after falling from the dangerous Ma Pi Leng pass, and 2 people who were killed following a collision with a truck on the route. So what should we take from all of this? There isn't a simple answer to whether the Ha Giang Loop is safe. Lots of people complete it every day, have the best time and no serious incidents. But it takes place on challenging roads in a lightly regulated environment with traffic that is increasing all the time. Doing your research before you go is key.
Motorbikes are dangerous anywhere you go, and you should be looking for not just the most highly recommended tour because it's fun, but also looking for things like safety and group size and things like that can really help.
The UK government advises that travelling by motorbike in Vietnam is much riskier than in the UK. It suggests you shouldn't hire a motorbike if you're not an experienced rider. And if you do, make sure to check it thoroughly, rent it from a reputable organisation and use a good helmet. And also make sure your travel insurance covers the Ha Giang Loop if you are planning to do it.
I think the local drivers are really, really talented in that area, that they really understand the terrain much better than a tourist would. Also, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself whilst you're on the loop. So if you do feel worried that your driver's going too fast, it doesn't feel comfortable for you, you can ask them to slow down.